Hello, welcome or welcome back to Sapling Tarot and to another episode of The Cards Were Dealt, my series of interviews about tarot and neurodivergence with fellow neurodivergent tarot readers. Today's episode is with the lovely Rhiannon Rain, and I will let her introduce herself.
So my name is Rhiannon Rain. I work very folk-based. I work a lot with fae, a lot of spirits, ancestral work, a lot with green magic as of late, and I'm starting to find my way that way. I love the green little creatures that I get to play with.
Oh, that's fab. I'm always really fascinated by people who work with the fae, like, around the world, because I've grown up with, like, Scottish and Irish fae, and they scare the shit out of me. So the idea that, like, I'm getting to know practitioners who, like, work really deeply with them is really, like, fulfilling and kind of makes my inner child very happy, because as much as I'm still scared of them, there are people out there who aren't scared of them, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, some of the scary ones are good for if you need it for a specific working, but yeah, I find a lot of them are just kind of misunderstood and are kind of grouped under a large umbrella that maybe does not necessarily relate to them specifically. I see every creature as an individual, just like every human being is an individual, and maybe one group might be a little bit more rowdy or more likely to cause havoc, but not every individual is that way, and some are very willing to work with you as long as you follow their rules.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's such a huge umbrella that covers all sorts of different characters and creatures and people, and yeah, that's very, very cool. So in terms of neurodivergence, how do you identify? Are there any labels that you like? Fine if there aren't any.
Yeah, I would definitely say I am unofficially diagnosed with anxiety, and that I do have an oversensory thing that I'm not sure really was what it's from. I have a curiosity. I don't know, it's not official, but it may be in the realms of some type of autism. I'm not very sure, but I'm just a little curious on that. I'm getting that checked out. But I do find I get overly stimulated very often. I have to wear earplugs quite often at work just so I can get through daily life. Otherwise, I kind of shut down, whatever that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, very pro self-diagnosis here, like, as much as people shit on that and kind of poo-poo that as a way of, diagnosis isn't accessible to everyone, and I think particularly people in our sort of community, we do a lot of, like, introspection and reflection about how we interact with the world and how we exist within the world, and so I think it's very valid to be kind of aware of yourself, and kind of neurodivergent being like an identity label rather than a diagnosis as well, of just being like, something about me and my neurotype is not what kind of the structures of the world were built for.
Yes.
And so yeah, having to wear things like earplugs and feeling like overstimulated by just the world generally is very relatable. So which came first for you, your relationship with tarot or your knowledge of kind of neurodivergence for yourself?
I feel like it was my knowledge of my neurodivergence, to be honest. I very early on realized that my brain would kind of just like take up bits and pieces from things that seemingly were like unrelated, and then I somehow would relate them to something that was like what I was trying to solve, and then I would add things up in my head and do maths and all this other stuff, and then suddenly I'm like, oh my god, I had a brain explosion and I realized something. So one story I had specifically was about having a realization with angel numbers and all the numbers that were lining up in my life at that time. And I kind of took a step back. I'm like, hey, like, do you do this? Like, is this normal for you? To my coworker. And she's like, I think you should see somebody. And I'm like, but no, like, it really makes sense.
Yeah, like those sorts of synchronicities, I think, they're part of just like paying attention rather than just going like autopilot through the world.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, people can be quite dismissive, I suppose, of that kind of thing, and that's a shame because they're missing out on these fun little kind of sparkly brain moments. So it's all kind of adding up and matching up, and it feels nice to notice these things. So, like, how would you say your experience of neurodivergence kind of shows up in and like shapes your life? You said about like sensory, things. Is that your main experience?
Yeah, I also find that even though I'm very a creative person, I'm very black and white with rules. So, like, if I have a rule and I'm told to do it a certain way, it's very difficult for me to, like, change that. I need to be told why and validated. And then if I don't think it makes sense, I'm not going to do it. So I struggle with that a lot in the workplace because it doesn't make sense to me. And sometimes it can come off as me being a little bit, like, maybe pig-headed or thinking I'm better than others. But it doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not going to do something that doesn't make sense. So I find, like, I need very, like, structured life, but I also need that room to be a little bit more free-spirited and creative, but I need the structure to get me there. Otherwise, I get lost.
Yeah, I feel that a lot, and the kind of following rules as long as they make sense to you has been something that I've struggled with a lot in terms of just because I say so is not a good enough reason to do anything, or like that's the way it's always been done, is like doesn't mean we couldn't do it in a better way, or that makes more sense. And yeah, it does come across maybe as like a little bit kind of arrogant, or like we know better, but maybe we do know better.
Sometimes we just have better ideas.
Yeah, because like maybe actually thinking about it rather than just doing the same thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. So like, what was your journey, the route that you took to kind of claiming neurodivergent as an identity?
I think it was really as of like the last 3 years, finally coming out of like a lot of mental health stuff and like finally finding a space that's more settled and being able to actually reflect on myself. Finally, I was able to realize that like these things most people don't do, and why do I do that? And my partner is much the same way. They have ADHD, so I might also have a little bit of that. I'm very similar to them, but like for example, like object impermanence. If I do not see something, it doesn't exist to me, and I will never see it again. But yeah, I just started realizing that most people in general don't operate the way I do, and I started like deep diving on YouTube and starting to follow other creators and just kind of reflecting on things, and I was like, okay, yeah, maybe there might be something here that I need to explore a little bit so I can understand myself.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's really hard, but I think it's kind of an amazing time to exist and to have access to resources so that we can do that kind of research, whereas like previous generations couldn't have done that. So it's pretty cool. What do you wish you'd known before you kind of realised? So if you could like talk to younger you, what do you wish you could tell her?
I would say you're not the one always arguing with people just for the sake of arguing. I grew up like with this belief that like I could fight for anything, and I had to fight with everything because most things didn't make sense to me and I needed validation for those things. And I would tell her that it's okay to feel the way that you do and that you don't have to prove yourself to others. And I just wish that she knew that there are other people out there that operate the same way that I did, and that it's okay to not always agree with everyone, especially like my family members and my grandparents and stuff like that. They grew up in a very different time where you were like seen but not like spoken to, and you had permission to go into the living room if you wanted to hang out with people, and most of the time you're outside by yourself hanging out with your friends until dinner time. And like, but if anything came up throughout the week that needed to be dealt with, you were told to like just shoo away and it's fine. But I needed that validation as to why, and it left me very unsettled most of my life, where I was just like, why can't I have an answer? Like, I don't understand why you're not communicating with me. I'm trying to communicate and teach you how to communicate, but I'm 10. What's happening?
Yeah, kind of trying to parent your own family into better communication skills better, but also just kind of how to be in a relationship with you, their family member. That's a big burden for a child to have to take on when you're still figuring these things out yourself.
For sure.
No, that's lovely. So how did you come to tarot?
I've always been very I guess, in the woo-woo. I don't know, like always very spiritually connected. I started getting downloads when I was quite young, not knowing what those were, having a lot of spiritual activations and knowings of things and not knowing what was happening. And I started reading books, and then I started coming across these authors that were writing about like folk tales and the Wendigos and all these things. And I was like, what is this? And then I dived into the world of tarot online and figured out that people would be able to like interpret these things that were coming into their brain through symbols and imagery on cards. So then I went to my first crystal shop and I grabbed myself my first deck, which was this Gothic tarot deck by, what's her name? Anne Stokes. I'm obsessed with it. It's so pretty.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it kind
That's gorgeous. Oh, that's fab. That's an amazing first deck to pick out. I love that.
Thank you. Everyone in the store was like, oh, you should do a Smith, Rider-Waite-Smith. And I was like, true, but I'm never going to look at it because it's not pretty to me. Right?
Yeah, if it doesn't speak to you.
Right? Like, I love dragons. I always have. I've always had a very deep connection to dragons and mermaids and stuff like that. So, like, looking at this on a daily basis, I'm going to pick it up. Versus,
yeah,
like,
I might actually learn that.
My Golden Gate tarot, not as much.
Yeah. No, I think that's like the best advice for anyone wanting to get into tarot is to find a deck that you like, that you want to look at, that you want to kind of get out and have in your hands and have that tactile experience and look at the artwork, because otherwise, I think particularly for, like you say, the kind of the object permanence thing of out of sight, out of mind, you're just never gonna look at it ever again. So that's a great deck. I suppose, what do you wish someone had told you when you first went into that crystal shop, other than pick a deck that you like, don't worry about a Smith-Waite, like, you can do that later?
That not everyone knows what they're talking about, even the people who work professionally at the bookstores and the crystal shops. And they can also spread misinformation and, gatekeep things without realizing it. I was told that I shouldn't buy my own first deck. I should have my cousin buy it for me as a gift. And I just told her that was utter bullshit, but then I always had that thing in the back of my mind where I was just like, is that wrong? And then I was realizing at the end where I was just like, oh, that's kind of stupid. I should never have doubted myself. But
yeah, and bizarre, because you'd think that like they'd want the business, so why would they be telling you like, oh no, you shouldn't like buy that for yourself? Why not?
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
It's such a silly one. But yeah, that's a good one, like about people. I think a lot of people within the sort of occulty space really like the idea of kind of gatekeeping and having some sort of like secret knowledge, because that's kind of the point. But then that is kind of a dick move as well. Like, if people want to learn, then isn't it great that more people want to be in this community and find the same things interesting that you do? So let them in. Let them learn the thing.
Yeah. As long as it's not something that is a protected religion, I think everyone should have access to whatever it is that will help them through things. And in my mindset, the occult will remain the occult if it chooses to remain the occult to that person. Like, if they're not going to go out of their way and study, and they're going to ask and have things spoon-fed to them, they're never going to really know the answers that they want anyways. I don't think everyone's going to always know everything as a general community and like know all of the secrets that we have, because even we don't, right? It takes lifetimes to learn everything. So I don't think there's really a worry there. I think people just need to calm down and just let people explore themselves a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Like you say, you know, apart from kind of protected and like really sacred practices and stuff, but like in terms of people who keep things secret and gatekept just so it makes them like feel good and feel clever, I'm like, why do that? That's no fun for anyone.
Yeah.
So how would you describe the relationship between your neurodivergence and your tarot practice?
Like how I experience my tarot through it?
Yeah.
I would say I have always struggled with memorizing things, and that's what I was taught when I first started, was get a book, read it through, memorize these things, and you'll know all the cards. And I'm like, no, that's not going to work. One, I hate reading things I'm not interested in. I'm interested in the cards and what I can get from them, but I'm not interested in reading about the history of the imagery right now. Like, maybe if I have like a hyperfixation moment, I'll go down that rabbit hole. But in this moment, I want to be able to pull from my brain and confirm it. Right? So I started developing a way of doing things through relation to other things. So when I hear things, like, I'm very musically inclined. I've always wanted to be a singer. I've always wanted to write music. And that's something I'm looking at exploring later in the future. But I've always like related sound and notes to different things. So if someone gave me a certain feeling, it might have like the chord of C to it in my head. And that's just something that's always kind of happened. So it's a visceral thing I can feel inside. So I related to certain specific cards, sometimes scent, sometimes a little bit of a sound or a texture. Like, for example, the moon card for me has always been like a silk texture. It smells of vanilla, and so on.
I love that. Yeah, that's such a beautiful way to learn things, is through those like personal associations. Because like obviously there's like a precedent of correspondences. So like various different people have put things like astrological correspondences and various different things onto the tarot, but having your own ones. And so things like a scent for each card. I love that so much. I know someone who used to make perfume oils based on tarot cards, and I was so nervous when she told me about it, and she was like, oh, I even found like the recipes for them, and I was just like, if you show them to me and I disagree, I'm not going to be able to like keep a straight face, because like I feel these things like so viscerally. And then fortunately she gave me like these ingredients list, and I was like, oh, correct, like, you, good job, 10 out of, or 21 out of 21, good job, we can, this is okay. This is like, we're not going to like have a fight about this, where I'm just like, no, the Emperor doesn't smell like whatever it was. So I love that. The kind of silk vanilla for the moon. And that's, yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So as you have kind of started to understand yourself and your brain more, has that kind of shifted your tarot practice, do you think?
Yeah, at first I started just trying to use the cards as like a tactile way to like help me think through things, but I relate to the imagery now more so as like a subconscious thing, right? So it's like helping me work through my inner brain patterns versus me getting an external answer through a tool. It's just helping me piece together things in the back of my brain now.
Oh, that's really cool. So you talked about getting like downloads and stuff. Do you use the cards to kind of piece those sorts of bits of information together, or are they totally separate?
Sometimes, yeah. There would be times when I was growing up, I had like the old texting phones where you had to like hit the button 3 times to text. And I was on my way to work, and I just had things like shoot through me, and I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm writing it down. I didn't know what was going on until I finished it, got off the bus, I read through it on my break, and I was like, okay, now I need to go back and like talk to these beings now, because I don't know how to connect to them other than like, I want to talk to you, but they're not answering me right now, right? Like, how do I connect to them in a way where it's easier for them? So I would use it as a confirmation of what I was getting the answers for. And yeah, it was just a way for me to like, now I can talk to spiritual beings outside of just my mind. If I'm not able to connect to them, I'm able to like get in a message through a card. And that's the main way I've been doing it for quite a while, is I'll work with my spirit guides that way, I'll work with Artemis that way, and then with Aphrodite I actually have a dowsing pendant that I made.
Beautiful. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, to have those like different ways of talking to different people. Like, there's some people that you see face to face, there's some people that you video call, there's some people that you text. Like, it makes sense that you'd have different methods of communication and stuff. So this is kind of a challenging one, because it's like, how do we differentiate between like our neurodivergence and us? But like, kind of what you know of your neurodivergence, do you think that impacts how you think tarot works, or your like belief in tarot?
That's a hard one. I would say that tarot is a system in my mind that was a download for people that they created as a form of communication that we now use to communicate with, and it's used in the way that it should be. I don't think it's separate. I think that it can work in tandem with our own abilities, and it doesn't matter how you work. If you resonate with imagery and you have correspondence to it, it'll work for you. So I think it's being used exactly the way it should be, and I don't think we need to complicate it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that it sort of doesn't matter, because I think that's where I fall on kind of believing in any part of my kind of like spiritual, witchy, woo life is I've reached a point, whether it's like I've got old enough or whatever it is, but like I kind of don't, it's not that I don't care, but it's like it doesn't matter as much like about the why and the do I believe in this thing. It's like it is what it is. So it's like it can be both. It can be fluid, it can be all sorts of different things to different people, and it doesn't have to be just one thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's really lovely.
If we didn't have like any tactile like confirmation from it, then yeah, I'd be like, why? But I know it works. I don't know why it works, but I've experienced it, so that's enough evidence for me to just be like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where I'm at with it, is I can't tell you how it works or why it works, but it fucking does. Like, it just sometimes it does the really weird thing, and you just kind of have to accept that, I think. And I think that's why tarot is a gateway to various different flavours of spirituality and stuff for a lot of people, is because it is quite uncanny and unexplainable. But yeah, do you feel like it helps you better understand yourself and your neurodivergence?
Yeah, absolutely. There's times where I was like, why do I feel like this? And it would be like, well, you need to work on this thing and this thing. And then I go and do that thing, and then things get better. And then I was like, okay, we can work like this. Good.
Yeah, job done. Great. Amazing. Oh, it's so good. Oh, yeah. I wish it was always that straightforward, but sometimes it is, and that's just, that's really beautiful. It's like, well, the card said this thing, and so I gave it a go, and here we are, and it all worked out.
Right? I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes I like to argue with my cards a little bit, because I like to argue, period. But it always comes out with the same cards, in the same order, for like 3 weeks.
Always.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop wasting our time. Sorry.
What's that about? Where you're like, no, I think I did it wrong, like I shuffled wrong, so like I need to like pull the cards again, and then you shuffle it for like 15 fucking minutes, and it's the same cards, and it's like, yeah, that's alright, fine, point taken, I guess.
Yeah, okay, that's where it's gonna be, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, no need to shout, I guess. Have you found any challenges in relating to like traditional or like mainstream tarot interpretations, including like archetypes or more collective symbolism?
Yeah, because I have my own relation to the cards now, and when I listen to their interpretation, I'm like, yeah, that might work with that group of people that are currently involved in that group, because they're relating to it, and that's why they're subscribed and stuff. But like, for me, like the person that, like, I don't know why I can't consider my brain, but like, who's constantly pulling in a love conversation, even though I'm not looking for that kind of like reading. I can't listen to it and try to find something in it, and then I'll start arguing in my brain about what she's saying. So I can't.
Yeah, and I kind of love that, because that is why there's a point in there being so many tarot readers, I guess, is that some people are tapped into the same kind of thing that you're tapped into, and other people are tapped into something wildly different.
Yeah. For example, I remember, I'll have to find her and send you the links so you can check it out, but there's this tarot reader that I actually adore, and she uses more than just tarot and oracle. She'll use stickers and letters and bits and bobs, and read through those, and that I cannot get enough of. It's so delicious to me. But then you have the other side where it's just like, everyone wants love reading, and I'm like, how like half-assed is this really? Like, did you just do this for clicks? or is this really a channeled reading where someone's going to get something out of it, right? So I really love the other option where people are pulling through things that they've archived into something like a version of a meeting. That's why it resonates so much with just having like a charms casting kit. I'm currently building that up myself because I can read better through that versus some other ways of doing things.
Oh, that's so cool. That sounds amazing. And like, I'm so like itching to go and like try that after we finish this chat. I'm gonna like get out all the stickers and be like, can I do this? Oh, that's too good. But yeah, I think I don't spend a lot of time on like reading, not reading, but like people doing readings on TarotTube. I don't watch an awful lot of that because, like you say, I kind of find myself not arguing. I'll be honest, arguing, but like then just having to do that, take a deep breath and be like, this is how they read. It's just as valid as the way I read. But then also, sometimes they'll trip and fall into kind of scaremongering stuff, and then I'm like, oh, I really don't have any time for that, particularly if it's you say something scary and then if you pay me this money I'll stop the scary thing from happening, and I'm like, you can get in the bin, you give us a bad name. I don't like that.
That's when we're entering grifter territory, and I'm just like block and delete. I cannot.
Yeah, so, you know, there's room for almost all of us. I don't think there's room for that, but in terms of like different ways of reading things, and like, yeah, if you're looking for a love reading, then I guess go and find those ones. I know that my YouTube analytics always tell me to make those kinds of videos, so there must be loads of people looking for them, but it's, if I'm with a person like one-to-one, I will do a love reading. I don't think I have, quite frankly, the stones to do like a collective love reading. That's too big for me to do that. That's too important.
Yeah, it almost feels a little irresponsible for me because you're not there with the person being like, okay, here are all of like your precursors of like, you know, don't go off the deep end, you know, do this, this, and this first before you're like, okay, goodbye forever. People just take things into themselves if they relate to it or if they feel something as a subconscious, like, insecurity, and they'll blow up their life. And that's why I don't do love readings, or I won't do them with other people. I'll help someone, like, interpret it themselves, or develop their own system with it, but I feel like it's a little bit irresponsible because 16-year-olds can go on there and they're like, I'm going to marry this person, and then they get self-obsessed, and it's just a whole thing.
I always forget about that as well, like, because if I was like at an event or something, I don't read for under 18s, but it's the internet and you don't know who's watching. They could be 11. Like, watching you pulling all sorts of either scary cards or really intense cards or whatever, and just, I forget about the teens and the preteens that are on YouTube, because of course they're on YouTube, but I forget that they could like trip and fall into our part of the internet, and that is, God, that's scary. But yeah, that's a really good point. Yes.
Yeah, I was really awakened to that recently. I had a comment on one of my YouTube channels. My YouTube channel, on one of my videos where I was talking about the Fae and my experience with the Fae as a child. And I realized, like, the questions that are coming from someone didn't seem like an adult-formed question. And I looked on the account, and she was like 12. And then I was like, okay. So then I had to go into my group chat with all the girls that we talked to, and I'm like, you guys, what do I say without sounding like a jerk or undermining, or like I'm trying to like push this belief system on someone who's so young? Like, what do I say? And so then I had to realize, like, sometimes you have to be a little bit careful and put all of your prerequisites out there, because 12-year-olds could be like, how do I talk to the Fae? And then they're like offering things to like something that might be not as friendly as you should probably be working with. Yeah. So that was an awakening.
Yeah. That is something we all need periodic reminders about in terms of putting stuff out on the internet, because I think about it in terms of anyone could watch it, in terms of like, don't put like your own private information out there, but I do forget a little bit about, because I think it's important to a point to not think too much about the fact that people are watching the thing that you're putting out, because then it can get a bit kind of stage frighty. But yeah, the oh god, 12, that's...
Yes, and like me growing up, I was that age. I was 12 years old, walking around my junior high school with basically a grimoire of the Fae that my neighbor made for me. I'm going to do a video on this later, so I won't go too much in detail, but I was that age, but I had the protection of the internet not being as accessible, and I had to take it really slow and read through a lot of things and pace myself through things. Instead, now people can just get online and be like, oh, I saw like a dwarf and I'm going to make offerings to them. But like, is that a dwarf, or is that another spiritual being that looks similar, but it's going to be a little bit more possessive?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That's a really good point. Like, I was, what age would I have been? I would have been like under the age of 10, roaming the Irish countryside looking for fucking fairy rings to go jump into. So I can't judge 12-year-olds coming into these spaces and asking what to do, because I didn't ask anyone. I just went looking for trouble.
Yeah.
And now I look back and I'm just like, it's a miracle that like nothing happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm 35 and I'm still looking for fairy portals. And yeah, it's still a curiosity for me. Will I jump through one? Probably not, but I'll look at it. I do see them on when I'm on my hikes. Like, I can visually like see a rippling between trees. And I'm like, yeah, so we're gonna stay on this path. But yeah, I do go looking for those things. Maybe I shouldn't, but you can't blame the younger ones for doing that, because I still do it too a little bit. I'm a little curious.
Yeah, but at least you have a bit more context and a bit more information for what it is you're looking for, rather than just like, hey, I read the story one time and so now I'm going to go, I don't know, look for mushrooms or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh god. But there's a side effect of the internet that I didn't anticipate. That's an interesting one. I saw the thing about like AI foraging books giving out really bad information about like what mushrooms are safe, and I was like, oh, we've hit a really bad and dangerous point.
Uh-oh.
That's real scary.
Yeah, did not hear about that. Not good.
No. Yeah, it was like, there was one mushroom I think that was saying that it was edible, and then someone, it was like, no, that'll effectively like dissolve your insides if you eat that. Please don't do that.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah. Watch out for the AI.
The AI. It's
alcohol and herbal and yeah. Jeez, what a weird time we live in. I suppose in terms of neurodivergence, but also just like your personal experience, how do you this sentence structure is going wildly off-piste. Intuition. What is your kind of relationship with your intuition?
It's always kind of like been there. And I don't know if it's because of like my clear knowing, or if that's always been there and that's what I think my intuition is, or if my intuition works just really well with it. But I've always kind of had this slight battle with it, because things would happen and I would know they were going to happen, but I'd have this weird feeling and I'm like, that's strange, why am I thinking that? Ignore the thing. The next hour to 3 hours later, something happens. This happened with a neighbor of mine, and I'm like, okay, not gonna see him again, because he's a construction worker. His truck was always in the back. He's a foreman, and he always parked it back in our backyard. And I'd walk past the truck. I'm like, oh, not gonna see that guy again. And I'm like, oh, that's weird and kind of scary. Don't think that. And then he had a heart attack that day. So things like that, like I'm still trying to figure out how to work with that, because I don't want that on a daily basis. I do want it for certain instances where it could help me, but like I want to know what I can do in the moment to stop that thing, because that was not helpful. It gave me fear, but I didn't know how to stop it. And if I knew why, I could be like, here, take an aspirin, we're going to the hospital, right? So I'm always like kind of fighting that a little bit. I'm a little bit bitter about it, but I can't take it away.
Yeah, I think that's understandable, because like you say, if you could do something with that information, like it reminds me of the Greek character Cassandra, where she's cursed to be able to see the future, but that no one will be able to hear her or no one will believe her. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's a really special kind of torture.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I can appreciate that would be a very challenging and, kind of embittering experience to be like, what what use is this? But yeah, that's really, that must have been really, really hard to be like, God, I was right about something that I couldn't have known. And like, I'm sure that there would be, I don't know, kind of, if you were that way inclined, you could kind of plot backwards and see that there were maybe like signs or whatever, but they'd be so subtle.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's huge. That must have been really, really hard. I'm really sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, it's definitely something I've had throughout my life, where it's been many instances like this that would happen, and I'm still learning to like figure out how to navigate that. But it's getting a little better every time. So hopefully one day I'll develop a system that'll actually like work for me.
Yeah, it's interesting though, like the idea that intuition and clair knowing are they the same thing? Are they different things? And that's not something I've really thought about before, about that kind of when information just kind of drops into your head and you're like, suddenly this thing, where did that come from? And like, to me they feel different. Like the intuition thing is like, I don't know, maybe it's because the metaphor is used so much that now I've been kind of conditioned to think this way, but it's like it feels like more of a gut thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas the clair knowing thing is like something has like fallen out of the sky and into my head. Mm-hmm. It's like my sort of bodily sense of the thing. But that's really interesting to think of them as like two halves of a whole. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. I mean, obviously your experience of it is really hard, but like the concept of the two things being similar is really interesting.
I always find like I'm always relating two halves of a whole of everything. I don't know what it is. I am a double Gemini, Libra rising. Everything has two halves to a whole. Even my relationship, we're both Geminis, day apart.
Whoa.
Both the other snakes. There's a lot of doubles in my life, so I don't know what that's a correlation.
I love that. No, I'm a big like Gemini stallion, so I'm always seeing like the grey and it's the funny thing of like, so I am autistic, and so one of the things about autism that people say is this like black and white rigid thinking, but it's like, but I've also lived like 3 decades of life of understanding that that's not what life is. Mm-hmm. And that life is never that tidy, and wouldn't it be lovely if you could put things in boxes, and I would probably be more comfortable if I could, but also I know the world better now, and I know that you can't do that. And so yeah, I'm very here for the Gemini, kind of just like walking that line between, well, not even walking the line, but kind of one foot on each side always.
Yeah.
No, I feel that in my bones.
Yeah. Working with the liminal has always been a thing with me as well, and that's probably why, because I'm always on one side and the other, so really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So do you have any kind of like rituals or practices that help you connect with tarot in a way that kind of accommodates your needs? I'm thinking like particularly like your sensory needs that you were talking about, but also don't feel like you have to share anything that's like really personal and private.
Yeah, I do have an incense that I like to burn when I am doing card readings. So it's like a base of like, it's like a mind incense, but it has like mint and some cinnamon in it and stuff like that. So it just helps me feel focused, and those two things make me very calm, and it also invigorates my mind to help me stay awake, because sometimes I'll drop into a bit of too much of a trance, and then I'm out and I'm sleeping. So I need to be a little bit more cognizant, but I like to do a lot of breath work beforehand. I like to just like play with the cards while I'm just kind of like thinking about the things that I want to ask. So I'm like constantly shuffling through them in my hands and just being tactile with them. I really don't enjoy when things are very like slippery. I like a bit more of a matte finish. I would prefer if most of my cards were square or a little wider in the hand. I know it's a weird thing to say because I have small hands, but I do like the larger like oracle card size things. Yeah, and I just like to I have a what's it called? I have a stone that I like to hold. It's a palm stone, and it's a moss agate. So I'll just be kind of like grounding through that, trying to like ground some of my energy, and then I'll just get into it.
Yeah, that's lovely. And you're not alone with the bigger card thing. I've definitely spoken to people where that's absolutely their preference, and they want something with more of a, like kind of the tactile experience of it. Like, I don't look for like really big cards, but I don't really work with like pocket decks, either I find them too kind of twiddly fiddly and I just end up throwing them everywhere. So it's, like we were saying, I'm kind of neither one thing nor the other, but I suppose I'm probably, as long as I can have them in my hands enough to sort of shuffle them, I'm all right. I do have some that are like arguably too big for my hands, and that's just a pain. But it's, I appreciate, particularly if you're kind of trying to balance that grounding thing, having that really tangible, tactile experience, I think makes a lot of sense. Do you have any cards that you feel either kind of like sum up your experience with neurodivergence or that come up a lot when you're kind of reading around, stuff like that?
The cards that come up very often for me? I have the Wheel of Fortune come out a lot, almost worrisomely. Still trying to figure out why. I also have an utter passion for the Star card. I don't know why. I just feel like it's another half of me. Love Star card. And then I do tend to get a lot of like a Devil reversal coming out a lot. I also know why that is, so that's good. Bad habits.
I mean, the Wheel of Fortune is my birth card, so if you ever figure it out, please let me know, because I'm still trying to figure out what that means for a life other than shit happens, which is that's all I've figured out at this point. You know, you just have to learn how to roll with the punches is my main reading of it.
I almost feel it as almost like a chakra energy. It feels like a spinning move, like a wheel. Yes, it's a wheel spinning, but I can feel it tangibly. It's the movement of motion, of like energy shifting for me. I feel like it just means the energies are changing and something new is coming, and you might like it, you might not like it, we'll see. Depends on what other card wants to pop up. But I always I picture like a light color energy. Sometimes it's different colors depending on the reading, but it's usually emanating a bright light and it's spinning like a chakra wheel for me. I don't really see the wheel. I see like a picture of it, a white light, sometimes with spotted colors in it, but that's usually what I see.
That's lovely. That's a really beautiful image. I know that I've spoken to Isha, the activist witch, before, and they grew up in Italy, so their like tarot experience is quite informed by growing up around Italian cartomancers, and the Wheel of Fortune is just fortune. So it's just like, good, fortune, good for you. And I'm just like, damn it. I'd like started on the Smith weight, so now I'm just like, sometimes you're on top of the wheel, sometimes you're being crushed underneath. Why can't I just see it as like, good luck, yay, you win, good things for you. And I try and think of it as like, that's what it is. It's just like good stuff. It's just all good stuff. But I've got like the Smith weight in the back of my head being like, it could all go tits up at any moment. But yeah, I like the spinning kind of rainbow wheel thing of like, the white lights, but sort of all the like prismatic colours together. I like that. I can kind of feel that settling into my brain and feeling all kind of nice and soothing. So thank you for that. That certainly helped with my my internal dialogue around that card. So what do you think would make the, I suppose, like tarot, but also kind of witchcrafty occult community feel more accessible to you?
Maybe just not being so... It's funny from someone who likes black and white things, not being so black and white about things, not saying you need to memorize the meanings. More people talking about the way that they learn tarot. I think that would be something that's helpful, because I've never heard of someone that learned tarot the way I did. I'm still learning tarot, but like I learn it in a way that I experience the world, and I think that's the way everyone should learn it. And it's gonna bring a different kind of medicine for each person that they can only deliver to the world, right? We all have our own. There's no reason to learn another method because we're here to deliver it the way we do it, right? So I feel like more people just talking about it, sharing their experiences, I think that'd be just really interesting. I would deep dive that.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that's I think that's spot on, and that's why like I get my cards read by other tarot readers, and people would be like, "Why? You can read cards yourself," and you're just like, "Yeah, but I'm coming from my perspective." Why would I not like want somebody else's? Because everyone else has their different, like you say, the different ways that they came through. And if we all learnt them like flashcards, if we all just learned it out of the same book, then there would be no reason for there to be so many of us. But because that's generally not how people learn, actually, people say that that's a good way to learn because it's quite hard to think yourself back into the mind of a beginner and go, well, actually, how did I do this? Did I do 78 flashcards? Probably not. And so I'm sure there are some people who did that, but like, I don't think I know anyone that successfully managed to do it, like some kind of school study activity. But yeah, I think and you learn so much about both the individual and kind of people in general, I think, by learning about how they read the cards, because we all have our own associations, kind of going back to what we were talking about at the beginning with your sensory perspective, which I love so much. There's like a really big part of my life is sort of the sensory seeking and like sensory overwhelm, like flip-flop of going from like one to the other quite dramatically all the time.
Yeah.
And so I really, really love that. I'm definitely going to be like journaling about that later. But yeah, I think that's a really good point that like people could talk about if they can remember how they learn.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like how people approach neurodivergence, I don't know how much conversation there is other than so many of us are neurodivergent, but like, are there any changes that you would want to see made around that kind of stuff in the community?
I would like people to ask more questions before making assumptions. It's like probably the biggest peeve I have is people making assumptions on a person. Currently just handled comments on my channel about that. But like, if you have a question on something, especially if it's something that's very personal to someone, instead of attacking someone and making judgments on someone, asking questions is so important. And in a way that's like respectful, be like, can I ask you a question so that I can clarify something for myself? Is that okay for you? And then if they're good, go ahead. But making assumptions about someone's entire personality just because you want to be a keyboard warrior is not chill, right?
Wow.
Yeah, so not good. Like, yeah, I'm probably not going to talk about it. I shouldn't. I'll just stir up some
That's
stuff.
fair.
But yeah, just asking people questions about how they experience things and, understand like that's just the way people process things and that it's not a big deal if you make it a big deal, then it will be. And then just asking people how like you could better operate around, right? It's just all going back to that relationship of how do you have a relationship with this person in this lifetime that you have with them, right? What needs do they have and what needs do you have and how do you become like intertwined in that way, I think is really important because most people don't set their boundaries down right away and then people get surprised when the boundaries get set. This happened to me recently at work where I was like, hold up, hard line, right? Usually very bubbly, usually very personable, but I really don't like being told what I can and cannot do in my own personal life. And people were completely and utterly shocked. They're like, whoa, all the responses, right? And instead of getting defensive, I think people really should be like, okay, I'm sorry I stepped over a line. Do you mind explaining to me why this was a line for you so that I can not do that again? I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, or like the shape of the line, because it's also kind of none of their business why it's a line. They just need to kind of accept it and respect it. And like that's kind of, that's it.
Yeah, like help me understand why I messed up, right? And like, okay, well, this is my line. Don't do that, right? If you want to explain yourself, cool. If not, you don't have to. And people being more open to being told no, right? Nobody gets told no nowadays, and it drives me a little bit insane. And if you say no or argue someone else like an opinion, people are very quick to attack you, and I don't think that that's chill either. I think people should be allowed to have their own opinion on something or their own perspective in life, and not be othered, right? So be very what's it called? You can still like coexist, but you just need to respect people. And I think that's what it comes down to, is respecting people. And it's not always about you. It's sometimes about someone else.
Yeah, and I think the question thing is really interesting. And I think that a lot of it is about, this is the hard one, particularly when we're talking about being autistic or potentially autistic and stuff, is it can be a lot about how you ask the question. And I know that tone is really difficult, and it's particularly difficult if it's written down. But like, questions in good faith, phrased politely, will go a long way, rather than questions that are phrased in a way that are just going to make people defensive real fast. Like, I really try when I'm interacting with people to generally operate assuming that people are operating in good faith. But sometimes people will phrase things in ways, and I'm sure I do it as well. And you're just like, that question feels really pointed, and it's really hard for me to not get defensive about this. And so just considering tone as much as you're able, but also accepting that people will respond however they're going to respond if you've maybe misjudged your tone. And so just trying your best to be kind and respectful when you're talking about, particularly because the stuff that we talk about, it all sort of comes under the umbrella of spirituality and things, which is deeply personal. And so if you're asking questions about someone's experience of these things, be respectful, be gentle, be kind, and just don't be a dick about it, I'd say that's a decent rule of thumb.
I wish I could just plaster that everywhere.